This is the journey to One Africa.
But you were part of the We Are Here movement also, which was about people who are living here already, sometimes for decades. Can you elaborate more about this We Are Here movement? What was the context and what people have been experiencing being here?
Okay, good. First, let me say it like that. Let me start it like this. I remember a couple of years ago, I think almost 10 years ago, we have started research here about African refugees here in Europe, for example. Excuse me. Then we find out like only France, for example, benefit 500 million a year. Every year, 500 million, but we invest nothing in Europe. Sorry, in Africa. And like 2 months ago, I was have a chance to travel to France again to do kind of a report about the migration for CNN. And I realized like 10 years ago, I have did research here about it, but then something now we're able to see it clearly. For example, a lot of undocumented migrants, Africans, young people, that have been forced to cross the Mediterranean Ocean, which become kind of symmetry to a lot of them. What makes me really think, it's not about what's all the European politicians thinks about it, but it's about also what do we need to change? Are we able to change something? Let's first start to distinguish what means the colonialism. What does that mean? For example, we try to distinguish it through the lines or to make some lines. It's a kind of force control. That's the first thing to think about it. And the second thing, divide to rule. This is something which is happening to be practiced a lot here. Even in We Are Here, for example, we witness some people come to support, but they're not there for supporting you. They're there to create a gap between you and your other mates, for example, in the organization itself.
Can you give an example of this divide and rule that is playing out? If I make like a tangible example?
Yes, for example, where is We Are Here now, if you think about it, when we were a very powerful movement fighting for human rights against racism, for example, and sharing information, exchange information with the students, creating events, panel discussions with the politicians. The out of it, we hear that, for example, We Are Here name become bad name. I don't understand, I don't know how name can be bad, but person can be bad. For example, your name is John, I call you John. John, it's your name. But how John can be bad, for example? John is not object. So they start like that, We Are Here name become bad, Yeah. And then that is one of the reasons, like We Are Here now. It's not about really finished, but just like also time change, for example, like what we witnessed in this since 2018, for example, until now. In Africa, there is a lot of military coup, for example. We witness also the young African generations, the kind of really fed up from African European relationship, for example. And the Russian try to study the gap in between to find a place to be there.
Yeah. No, I think this divide and rule also happens, let's say, within Dutch society. I remember what you say, that We Are Here got a bad name, was at the time you had a lot of direct actions, like you were squatting for housing, things like that, and it got portrayed in a certain way.
Yes, because, because that was recently, let me first give you a background of We Are Here. We Are Here of a group of undocumented migrants, self-organized since 2011, 2012. That was because of the gap which was created in the Dutch asylum policies by some political leaders. Let me give you some name, for example, Rita Verdonk and the Tevens, Meneer Tevens. And that was to discourage others not to come to demand asylum in this country. That was the reason. So we find that really harsh, and we will not accept to deal with it. So we have to create visibility. We have to come together to be able to share our message, for example. And a lot of people here, there was also there, him also, he was there all the time. Abdurazak and also. So this was the reason. But then, for example, you will not accept to be an example, because you believe that you're born free and you should live free. and you have to do everything what you like to do freely. Even though we have no chance to be stayed in our country there, we forced to give up our country to seek or to search safety somewhere else. But let's also come back to the reason, for example, what forced young African generations to give up the country. Look, when you give up your country for reasons, sometimes it's okay. But sometimes when you give your country with no any perspective of coming back, you have to think about one thing which is you have never experienced it before. For example, when the past become less important than the future. You mean your past is your history, is the place where you were born, where you were raised. You know, the food, the taste, the smile. You know, the people, your friends. You have to give up this all just in one day. You know, like kind of really challenge decision that you have to take. And when you come also, you have to face all these
barriers, the ocean.
Yes. Yeah. And when you study it, you find out, like, for example, 80% of the African migrants today, only one country was the reason, is France. But the European Union is weak to face France to say, I wish if Geert Wilders, for example, then to bombard the refugees, bombard the European Union to change their policy to Africa, for example.
Yeah, because they are coming because of the external policies. That's what you're saying.
Yes. And I used to mention in a lot of different places, it's what we need in Africa. We need exercise books. We need book and pencils. We need to create classrooms and give the kids opportunity to predict their own future. That is what we need in Africa. But we do not need jet. We do not need tanks. We do not need weapons to fight against each other. And what is really there also, suddenly now what I have also learned from my country, Sudan, for example. Now there's a lot of going on in Sudan there. You know, something really shameful, you know, like some of the European countries, you know, just like openly dealing there with some dictatorships, and they're bombarding the refugees here. Mm-hmm. So it makes me think about, you know, about the slave trade. The slave trade was about if you load the boat from Africa to Europe or to America, if you brought them all, you will be paid. If you kill them all, you will be paid.
Mm.
You know?
And for people who don't know, this is also if you Google something around like externalization of borders and who we're trading weapons with, we're like trying to trade with dictators and things like this to keep the borders. Because people think that the European border starts in Europe, but nowadays it's already into the African
European border is not started in Europe. European border started in Sudan, for example, by the SRF, Rapid Force. I don't know what they call them. Yes. And these people, there was militant creating by the Omar al-Bashir, the former president of Sudan, or also dictatorship. And that was, for example, he went to because it was a little bit difficult for him to split the military, because some of the hierarchy in the military also against his policies. He has to create something to balance. He created this militant. The European Union at that time they have plan also on supporting the border security. So there was a lot of refugees come, for example, from the Horn of Africa. Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, for example, crossing the Sudan to Libya, and from Libya to Italy. They want to close that border, so they start to finance the militant in Sudan, RSF. And you know, it's very complicated. What's happening now? All the finance and the equipment and the ammunition that they have received from the European Union, now they use them against Sudanese civilians, while the European Union is side of look. And we call them, we announce it in so many different locations. We said, guys, now the situation is not like before. The situation is really dramatically change. And there's also opportunistic. They're using the gap between our relationship here. I mean, Russia. Some of the African people really that did not happy to have a contact with Russia, but they've been forced. As some, like also the same, just we have been forced to come from a country, for example, to seek or to demand asylum somewhere else. Also, have been also forced of the way that have been treated you to choose another friend, which is also, he cannot be your friends because he has also his own agenda. But to you that time, you will be blind, you will not see, you will think that is the better. But in the fact, that is not the better. The better is how we can fix the relationship that we have built. I do not believe in this all generations context, all generation politicians. This is only times go, because most of them, since I have born, I saw some of them there in the parliament. Up to today, they would never want to leave, and they will not leave until to die. I think this is our worst problem today around the world, not only in Africa, even in Europe here. Here in Holland, here we have also now, I think, I don't know how long, we have no government now.
I mean, every 2 years it falls, and then.
Okay,
but it was been steady,
yes,
Mark Rutte, and we'll see what happens next.
Then then what is going on? Like Route 3, Route 4, Route 5, what is going on? There is no new generation ever that took place of these people. That is what we need. By our gathering here today, I think it's a very great opportunity. Each one of us here, when you leave from here, you go to back your home with your homework. This is really can be homework, and to change these things, it some takes time. Some it happens, but when we push, force, we will achieve it. We are here. When we start, was 20 people. I don't know. After a couple of years, become like 450 people. The same cases have been denied before.
Khalid, can you also move to the wrap-up so I can also, do finish. But
okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
The same cases have been rejected before have been accepted. And why? Because we have really forced and we join our effort together in order to achieve something, and that's happened. And now I would like to send you the same message, please. Just take it as a homework, share it with your friends. What do we need? I believe most of the young generation today, they are really happy to travel to live somewhere else. And we can create the safe to that place from here. Before we go there, everything will be okay. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing. And also sharing the perspective of the borders, getting outside of Europe and our homework here. Francesca, maybe you want to share also what your study results were. We started the evening with the cacao industry. And a lot coming in from Ghana, Ivory Coast. Maybe you can share what you found out and the link to migration.
So my research was kind of linking these two topics. Unfortunately, I am yet to carry out most of it. So I'll be collecting primary data and conducting interviews throughout the next coming weeks. So I can only speak with the preliminary literature reviews and preliminary findings I have. But yeah, so the what I'm looking at exactly is how this neocolonial relationship and the unequal trade affects living conditions and ultimately drives migration. And I'm sure we've all seen the kind of rise of right-wing governments across Europe and this kind of anti-migrant rhetoric. But as everyone has said, there's really a lack of motivation to deal with the root causes or help to deal with the root causes. So, and there's quite a big research gap with regards to this link, in the sense that a lot of migration or like fair trade theories, a lot of the literature is from the 1990s or the 2000s. So we definitely need a bit of a refresher. And if we want to talk about the Ghanaian cocoa industry, the EU obviously is by far the most important for Ghanaian exports. So, as everybody has said, we have a part to play in this, and this also means that the future demand for cocoa is predicted to be high. But it's kind of shifting to more conscious consumers. So I think consumers are starting to care a little more about sustainability and all of these things, which means that producers and the big Western chocolate companies can come to benefit from selling premiums or certifications as such. Although Ghana still has a very limited production possibility, despite them trying to increase domestic consumption. And one of the big problems is that it's a highly concentrated market. So this really has negative consequences for the farmers, as Max was saying before. I think only 4% was a statistic I read recently. 4% of farmers gain 4% of the profits of a chocolate bar, essentially, which is, you can imagine, nothing. And this is because like roughly 10 companies own 43% of global sales. And because of how big the industry is and all of these factors, it's very, there's lack of alternative livelihoods, and the working conditions are obviously terrible. It undermines the sustainability, as Max was saying, child labor. Thousands, millions of people's lives depend on this, but it's a very, I mean, people are harmed essentially, and it's a big push factor for migration, as I found from the literature. We'll see if the interviews agree.
And the push, how is it reasoned? How is this leading to the push?
It's a pretty simple. I mean, so poor living conditions. Yeah. So if there's no, as I can't remember who was saying it, but if you're pushed to, you have nothing left, then people will get on these boats and risk their lives to come to Europe for a better life. And in Europe, people keep on saying we don't want them, but we don't want to find the solution. So in this push factor, in the sense that economic troubles at home are often a very significant driver of migration, which, I mean, it's fairly obvious. Like, yeah.
Clear. Thank you for sharing. And maybe, Kjeld, I want to show one statistic. There was the one that I didn't get to in my presentation, where you see a huge pile of cash on one end and a smaller pile of cash on the other one. And it's, yes, great. I thought I had to explain more, but it's this one. I didn't get to explain it, but it was talked about a lot around economic independence and self-reliance instead of getting aid and being dependent. And there was a study trying to make this visually visible. So you have 3 factors in which the global southern countries are developing Europe. And that is one, tax avoidance. So let's say you have a British mine or something, or land that is being sold and privatized, and then they don't even pay taxes for the resources that they steal in the country itself. So it goes back with the whole construction that Max showed. So tax avoidance is one. Debt interest rate. So then you lend money, but you make profit over what you loan. You lend €5, and then you get back €10 in the end because of interest rate. And then there's cheap labor, right? What Max said, people went from 0 per hour to 80 cents, what you said, on average in the cacao industry. So cheap labor. If you take these factors, then around 2 trillion is stolen every year from the global south. And then in development aid comes back 130 billion. So, and this is sort of the narrative we need to break, right? The Giro 555 culture, I sometimes say, like, we need to help others, but we're stealing away all the, what is called the resource theft. So I just want to show this graph to make visible the looting of the.
This is the most thing, like one of the thing which is in the future is going to decide how the European-African relationship it can be, but with this new generation, not with old generation.
Yeah.
Really there is kind of things going on there. So like when we're here, we're creating this awarenesses, very important for the people also, with our European politicians, for example, to think about them before it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah. And one more thing, just short to add on what you said. I also had a discussion with Mevrouw Ploemen on this industry. We don't want a linear industry in Africa. We can go to circular industrialization of Africa very, very, very fast. But to get there, we need to have capital for it. And this is a way to get that money in Africa and invest in clean industrialization. So that's very important also to mention.
Question to you. Do you think African leaders of today, they know what is the African resources value and what is Africa value itself?
They don't know.
That's the problem, I think.
They don't know.
That is the problem.
They don't know.
That's the problem.
Now we are doing a research with the Wageningen University to list all the shareholders in the cacao industry in the Netherlands. I was talking to someone from the Cocoa Board, that is the institution in Ghana who control cocoa. They didn't have any ideas about who is doing what with cacao when it's happened, when it's arrived in Amsterdam. They don't care about that. They send secret services to Europe to follow people like you and me, instead of following their money. So they don't have any idea about that. That's why now I'm happy Mika start talking like, I don't call these people leaders. If we solve this problem, we will become the legitimate leaders of Africa directly. So it's not only about economy, it's about how we are going to build Africa for the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think you also answered my question. No problem, no problem. In terms of what you think is most important to do. So to summarize, it's getting a shareholder of what goes out of Africa
Exactly.
as a simple solution, but you can apply it systematically not only to cacao, but other
To all raw materials.
and that can be reinvested
in cleaner
within
industry.
that context. So thank you for sharing that. Then
Okay, what I would like to add here, I would like to say I'm really interested in relation in general, but in this specific topic of today, European-African relationship. You know what? Relationship always, built in just simple things, not really that difficult things. It's just few things. For example, the impact of I welcoming you, for example. Here, I would like to mention, I would like to talk here about the African refugees in Europe. First thing, the impact of welcoming, here in the camp, for example, or when you come, you demand your asylum, sometimes it's really terrible. It's really terrible. And that impact, it will stay in your mind until you leave this world. It's not about just short of time. And also the courtrooms. The judge should represent the public of his state. And the law, something should be practiced. It's not, but when you go to the refugees court, for example, you will see the difference. And all these things, create really a very deep impact of those whom are vulnerable, they have forced to leave the country and searching safe world somewhere else. And those whom should protect them, they just treat them in a different way. If we're able to do that, I think we will be able to change something. And of course, also we pray for Palestine and Palestinian people, and we wish peace should be established there somehow. But it will not happen before our making the first step. 7 years ago, I mentioned something and I said it was in the, I think, live Facebook event. People say Khalid is get paid by somebody, but it's not. I was saying, how we can reach the activism in Jerusalem, in Israel, because I believe not every Muslim is terrorist, and also not every Israeli is Zionist. There are some people really against the apartheid in Israel. How we can reach these people to talk to them and to able to work with them to create kind of that I don't know what this will be.
Maybe from the river to the sea, that there's equality, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for.
Yes, thank you for sharing, Francesca.
I have nothing as powerful as these last two remarks. I just wanted to echo that I fully agree with everything that was just said, and maybe echoing Mika's point before about education, because I think especially from a kind of European perspective, that's what we really need. Is the horrors of colonialism are really just not explained or taught in depth as they should be. And I think when we start with that, and education can change the kind of cultural thought of people in Europe, and that's where we should start, at least from our side. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And with these last words, I want to give a warm applause to our panel, Khalid, Joan, Francesca, and Fairuz.